So welcome to the .conf wrap-up from conf20. We're joined with the members of the Big Data Beards. We'll be introducing those in just a minute. But to get going today, we're going to, it is Veterans Day here in the U.S., so we'll give a little plug on that, talk about the Splunk Portal Hub, and then get into the .conf wrap-up and listen to Big Data Beards talk about the virtual race to conf20. So being Veterans Day, Splunk actually, was a year or two ago, committed $100 million to the pledge to the veterans. And what that means is if you are a veteran, you can sign in with your OneID veterans and be able to get some training to get your foot in the door to help you out with that. Put a link to the Work Plus here for the veterans. And right out of the gate, you get Fundamentals 1, which is free to everybody. Then you also get Fundamentals 2, which normally costs, but as a thank you to our veterans, we're giving that away free right now as part of the $100 million pledge. So definitely thank you for everybody that has served, continues to serve. And here's a little help to get you back in the workforce, get you going, get some training. Because we need your skills. The Splunk Portal just got rolled out yesterday to the Splunk community. It essentially allows allows us to use the old forum style of communications. I know our groups aren't very active on Slack and those that still use IRC, but the Slack user group channel is not very active. So this is still a way for us to stay engaged. We can post different items on there, different questions. And even after the meeting is done, I can take this slide deck and post it right in there. Any additional items that we want to share need to be able to get to you instead of just trying to email it out to the group or put links to different Google Drives, whatever. We can actually just attach it right in the meeting space for the portal. So look for more messages coming through that and follow up for that as more and more people are able to start using this. I did drop 2 items, one in each group for topics for future meetings. So even if you're not in this group, you can still join us and give your input for future meetings on what we can do. All right, the housekeeping out of the way. So I'd love to hear everybody kind of talk on this one. And if you are muted, go ahead and you can unmute and give your opinion or put it in the chat also. So what were some sessions that everybody really enjoyed? What's everybody's thoughts on what was done well, and what can we do next time for the next meeting for all the user community? So I'm going to start. The session that I actually enjoyed was the new dashboarding beta. Clara and Niket, the late Niket, had a great session going over the power and functionality of the new dashboarding beta. And I've already taken it and has made some of the reports that I typically generate for management a lot cleaner, a lot better looking. And they've actually really enjoyed it. What are some other people's thoughts and ideas?
So one of the sessions that I particularly enjoyed was the one also with Clara and Martin around the job inspector, and really going into some depth in terms of how to interpret your results and make your searches more efficient. I thought that was a really good talk, and to fit into a 30-minute session, all the things that you need to know at least to start with as far as the job inspector goes. I thought that was really good. I enjoyed that session. I thought that the platform was a lot better than it was as well when compared to Splunk Live. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near as what it was in person, but it was better. and hope to see it improve as well for any future events as well. I think given the challenges that we've had this year, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Westy. Coming off of Splunk Live, I was a little discouraged by that platform and the amount of interaction that you could have. I thought it was leaps and bounds better this time. I thought there was a lot more ways to engage, ways to have conversations. I really liked the digital playground. I thought there were some really cool use cases and some really cool just things that people are doing with Splunk there and some ways to interact with the community. So definitely thumbs up to the night and day change in the platform for conf. I thought it actually made it as bearable as possible for us not being in person, right? I actually also, for the first time, was actually able to do some of the hands-on labs and do that. I thought that the 40 minutes period for it was a little bit challenging because I was trying to do that while also doing other things and other parts of my job. But I did like the hands-on labs, especially the machine learning one.
Tony, hey, it's Marty McCaslin. So a couple observations. It was very, I think we've all hit the point of kind of Zoom overload and training overload and conferences overload and all that. And so the thing that I thought worked well with conf20 is something Brett just alluded to, and that was the interactive nature of it. Boy, before that, I've been part of a couple of trainings that went on 2 or 3 days, essentially PowerPoint after PowerPoint. And if you can't do anything hands-on, you just check out. You just simply do. So I thought Splunk did a nice job with that. It's certainly not, and I think Tom alluded to this, but not even close to, the experience you get in person. So you make the best of it. I did have some troubles kind of toggling back and forth between, I don't know if some of it was time zone related, but I was getting notified of when a session would start, and then when I would go in to get it, it hadn't actually started and wouldn't be starting for another 45 minutes, some of that stuff. Well, then what you do is you get distracted, you move on, and you don't participate in that session. So it wasn't a perfect platform, but it was better. And I suppose in many ways it was about the best it could. I've probably sat in on maybe 6 partner user conferences or other types of partner virtual conferences. And the platform was among the best I've seen for sure. So just some general observations.
Yeah, and then the company in Toronto happens to actually be part of the West Corporation here in Omaha, which fun fact is where I cut my teeth on Splunk.
Yeah, I saw that, and I wasn't exactly sure what I saw the powered by Intrado stuff, but I guess in some ways, even though they're a client of ours at Sirius, I didn't know that they had that solution set or that platform. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I forgot about that.
How about anybody else? John, what's your thoughts on how Boss Knock went?
I'm really happy with it this year. I'm not sure if anybody got a chance to experience, the new platform that we spun up. We're calling it effectively what was an internal development name, Boss NG or Boss Next Generation for how we're delivering that content. But it is now the external way of calling it. And we're going to be delivering a lot more content, including some of the stuff that the Big Data Beer Guides are going to talk about here in a minute, in that way in the future. So you can look to see a lot more from me about that in the next weeks and months and quarter. And Corey's going to be helping me out with that. So that's an interesting segue. Corey is, I know that you guys know Corey from Big Data Beards, but he's actually on my team now. So we're going to be working really closely together on both Boss of the Knock and some of the stuff we delivered this year and some really cool new things coming out of that soon. Did anybody get a chance to play that? I could go look up the list and see what it looks like. But I know, Tony, you and I were talking about, delivering it for some different audiences and maybe some higher education and even high school venues the other day. We really do have a really cool opportunity to deliver that in a virtual way that's engaging and hands-on and easy for people to use without a lot of that lift that, I had to do in the past. I know the last time that we played here in Omaha, you guys kind of saw what the effort that goes into putting on those events. We won't have to do all of that anymore. So it's going to be an interesting way for us to deliver that. So overall, I'm really happy with it. I'd love to hear anybody's feedback. If you know anybody who played, or if you got to play yourself, you guys know how to find me on the user group channel, and, let me know.
Yeah, the conversation, the questions came to me. We're looking at planning B-side Splunk. And, normally we had that during conf, kind of a little corner of the user group area. But this year definitely would have been overload trying to do that, and everybody go into the sessions or do it the couple days after everybody would have been checked out mentally. So we said, let's do it later. So now we're actually planning on it being mid-cycle. So we kind of get a little Splunk booster shot about halfway through the season, looking right now about April. So that was one of the ideas, was maybe having a track for high school, college kids. And so that's where that came out of.
Yeah, let's work on that. That'll be cool.
Did anybody watch the Dungeons and Data Monsters? The D&D game that went on after late night conf, depending on your time of the world.
I saw bits and pieces of it, but I was up 24/7. So
let's see. We got in chat. This is the first time Splunk novices were. So we did bots. Was our first time. A lot of Splunk novices. So I screen shared and we worked through together. It was really a great time. People learned a lot by doing it. And, that is probably the biggest thing. Being able to, the bots and bots and boss of the knock are both great ways to learn because it's real world scenarios, real searches that you have to do, and searches that you will do normally in your day-to-day life. So yes, I completely agree, Craig. That's a great way to learn, even if, you're not scoring that 1,000,000 points. Getting those first even 10 questions right is definitely a great way to learn how to develop your skills, especially with the hint system that they have. I mean, you have no idea what's going on. Get that first hint, get that first step in the right direction to know what to do.
And Tony, I'd say this too, just as a John mentioned it before, but if you are a beginner and you've not played the Boss of the Knock program, one of the most entry level scenarios that's out there in the Boss of the Knock is actually the iRacing scenario based on the work we did as part of this virtual racer.conf. And so I definitely encourage folks, especially if you have new folks in your organization that really don't, they don't understand Splunk, and maybe they don't even work in the IT group specifically, but they need to understand how the platform could be leveraged. It's kind of a fun idea to say, look, this isn't even like IT data. If you're mildly into racing in cars, here's a way to actually start to understand the platform and draw some analogs between a real life scenario that may be useful to you and kind of a fun use case as well. And there's going to be, as John mentioned, some more development there, but it's one I definitely will call it. And it turns out, I think it was one of the most played scenarios of all of the bots and
one of the most. It was the most. It was by far and away the most popular scenario we had of the 14 that we presented to our customers at Boss of the Knock this year. So
with some proud folks here. Glad to hear that.
Great. Anybody have any other thoughts on how .conf went, and their thoughts, their wish list? If we could have done this, could have done that.
Being in the UK, having something that was a little bit more like what you guys received in America would have been really nice. Everything was on demand, and you got no labs. So you were either like the Dungeons and Dragons or Dungeons Data Monsters. That was at I think 3 a.m. I'm game to stay up late, but even that's pushing the boundaries for me. But like I said, I thought it was really good overall. I just felt as though it was a little bit of a shame that certainly, but yeah, that would be my big takeaway.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, selfishly, one more day in the virtual setting would have been nice, just because there's so many things I wanted to do and sessions I wanted to see that the 2 days went by pretty quickly. Obviously, you can do it retroactively, and I spent some time over the weekend looking at some sessions, but it still would be nice to block the calendar off for 3 days of the conference.
It does help.
I spent the almost the entire time in community chat, helping and answering questions, and it was a lot of fun. People getting to know each other, getting to ask the questions, and something I've always said about the Splunk community, it's great that you can ask every question, entry level question, and not feel like, oh my god, I'm going to get flamed on this one. So very, very big props to our community for being very understanding and helpful of everybody. So we got one more coming in. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go right to the Big Data Beards and listen on who you guys are and your journey to .conf this year. Since it was all virtual, you didn't get to pack into the sardine can this year and drive across the country.
Yeah,
I'm pretty happy about that.
Let's be honest. There's pros and cons to everything. I think 2020 is a year that has proven to us that the way we did things before may not be the way we do them in the future, and that is both good and bad. But I think like many of you, you're trying to make the absolute best of a year in a situation that is not easy. And I can say we had some fun. It was a crazy amount of work and effort that took a lot of people doing a lot of pulling on the thread together, and it was super fun. But Tony, if you want to give me control, I've got a deck I can walk through with my friends Brett and Tom, and we'll do introductions sort of in line here when we get going. But I've got a few little video things I wanted to share with you, if that's okay. All right. Let's see if this works. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Let me go full screen and see that it works.
Drum roll.
Right. Did that work? No. There we go.
It's on the wrong monitor, isn't it?
I can't.
This is
I
always
can't
the bit where I get nervous.
There we go. How about that? Is that good?
Yep. We can see full screen.
Woohoo! Way to go, Outlook, or whatever it's called, PowerPoint. All right. Well, hi, everybody. We're going to tell you a little bit about the Big Data Beards virtual race to .conf. And I figured let's have somebody else do the talking instead of just me. So let me play a quick video for you. Oh, wait, it is me talking, but somebody else too.
Welcome, everybody, to the Big Data Beards session on the virtual race to .conf20. We had a lot of fun, and I'd love to invite one of our friends to kick us off. Here's Lando Norris, driver of the number 4 car for McLaren's F1 racing team. Lando?
I've never done this before, and I've always wanted to. So, ladies and gentlemen, please start your engines.
I mean, come on. You start with, get away from me here. Okay, so starting with Lando Norris, I feel like is, it only goes downhill from there. But he did actually come in and hang out with us for an interview as one of the virtual race to .conf races. And if you don't know what a virtual race to Splunk.conf is, we'll explain it to you. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the team. I'm Corey Minton. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at BigDataBeard.com. We are a creative media company focused on the trends, technology, and talented people making big data a big deal. Now, it's not just me. I've got a team of folks who are similarly minded, similarly geeky, but also really good at creating interesting content and conversations. Brett Roberts, he's our COO. Kyle Prinz, who's not with us today because he's in Australia and sleeping, hopefully. And Tom West is our VP of Engineering. And I'm excited to say two things. One, thank you, Brett, and to all of our veterans for your service. Brett was a captain in the U.S. Army and served our country well, so thank you for that, buddy. And all three of the guys, Brett, Kyle, and Tom, are members of the SplunkTrust. So thank you very much to you guys for all you do for the community. And I'm super proud to see you guys be honored that way. My day job, though, is I do work at Splunk. So I am super excited to be part of this community in a big way. Now, let's go back in time. As Tony mentioned, we did this crazy thing last year where we got an RV, we outfitted it with a bunch of IoT gear, we splunked it all, and we created a road trip where for 2 weeks we crossed the country, starting in Boston all the way to Vegas over 2 weeks. And at every stop along the way, we had conversations, both on we called it the Breakfast with the Beards show in the morning, and then podcasts in the afternoon with folks that were Splunkers, Splunk partners, Splunk customers, just people doing interesting things with Splunk technology and exposing those on our podcast and our media channels. It was crazy. It actually ended with us driving that 42-foot long RV onto the floor at the Venetian Conference Center and actually having like 6,000 of you guys and gals come in and actually see the things we'd done from demos, actually walk through the RV and have a really, kind of hands-on experience on what it was like for Kyle, Brett, and I to live in that thing for 2 weeks together. And let me just tell you, 3 grown men in something that small, even though it's a nice size RV, is more close contact than anybody really deserves. So this year, we had to deal with the reality that is 2020, and while it does suck in many ways, it presents opportunity. So we wanted to build on the things that we had done with the road trip to Conf and do something fun and engaging that was similar, but was obviously respectful of the idea of a virtual setting. So that's really where the idea of the virtual race to .conf was born. And basically the idea was we wanted to host a racing series where we invited our partners, a bunch of Splunk partners and Splunkers, to come race with us in a racing simulator. And we wanted to create the ability to extract data from that racing simulator and expose insights into the racing action using Splunk's data to everything platform. Honestly, it's just another one of those ways to, we thought like of a creative use case for Splunk's data to everything story and to really create a narrative around, motorsports. And it wasn't a hard jump. I mean, if you all, are your fans of Splunk, obviously you've seen probably the stuff about the McLaren partnership. So we knew there was going to be a thematic sort of motorsports flavor to some of the things that would go on at .conf. And so we wanted to jump on that bandwagon. And it turns out we had a bunch of sponsors that felt very much the same way. Even McLaren, who jumped on and sponsored. And they actually, not only did we get to talk to Lando Norris in one of the openers, but we actually had some of their professional esports drivers come race against us. And that didn't go well for us. I'll just say that.
They lap me a lot every time.
We were
all the laps.
I mean, all the laps. It was embarrassing. Now, when we were thinking about the platform, Splunk has actually published a handful of works in the past around Project Cars as a racing video game. After the partnership with McLaren, they did some work. James Hodge and the team and the chief technology advisors, they did some work on the F1 Codemasters game. But we wanted to do something that wasn't a video game. We wanted to do something that was a proper simulator. And the difference is that a simulator seeks to do exactly that, provide real life, as close to real life experiences as possible for the people who are consuming it. And I can tell you what, iRacing is the world leader in racing simulators. And I can tell you, here's why you know that. When like NASCAR and Indy had to go virtual, and Australian V8 Supercars had to go virtual during COVID, this is the platform that they used to power their virtual races when they continued racing. So the thing is, iRacing, it's an online platform, and really all you need to get going is you need a Windows-based gaming PC. Nothing too crazy. I actually bought a refurbed like Dell computer for like $500 that had a really pretty low-end GPU in it, and it ran it fine on 3 monitors. You need a wheel and pedals. It's not a controller game. You really do need the wheel and pedals. You need some monitors, ideally 3 monitors, or VR is really awesome. Using the Oculus headsets is crazy immersive. And then you can bolt the steering wheel and pedals to your seat, but having a sim seat is pretty helpful. But take it from Brett, read the instructions on assembling your seat. He had a slight disaster where it tried to taco him. But let me tell you this, it is incredibly immersive. My mom actually went driving in this thing, and her and my stepdad both got motion sickness, like in a real way, after driving in this 3-monitor setup. So it's not a game. Take it seriously. It's pretty slick. So
Corey, just to add to that, just trying to reverse in VR, you definitely feel like you're going backwards. It's pretty crazy how real it is, and how unforgiving it is if you don't drive properly.
Yeah. So let me tell you this too. The VR experience, one thing that's this kind of a side note, funny thing. If you're in VR and somebody then hits you and your car goes and flips, that is what we call it produces an episode within your guts. It is not awesome feeling. All right. So it's one thing for me to talk to you about it, but let's do this. I'm going to show you a video that actually shows you from the cockpit what it's like. And I'm going to narrate for you. This me and the virtual me is going to narrate some of what the experience is like in iRacing, because it really is quite immersive and awesome. Here we go.
As I've said, this is not a game. You have to be highly aware of the situation around you. In the pits, there's pit speed limits. You have to come out safely looking for those green cones. You have to enter the track safely, making sure not to impede the traffic. You also need to be super aware that the physics engine in this game recognizes that your tires are cold when you come out of the pit. So you got to take it easy on that first lap or two to get over the heat in those tires. It's one of those situations where track awareness really does win the day. Here we see two folks that are racing really hard, really tight, but the sport car in the rear is following pretty close going into this first turn.
What a great driver too.
Invite you if somebody decides to brake a little earlier than you had anticipated. Being track aware is super important, not only if you're the one doing the passing, but if you're the one being passed. In this situation, we're approaching a car that's lap traffic, and we're trying to make a pass, but we recognize they're not going to make the turn in, so you got to be aware that car is going to miss the turn, and you got to slow down and let them do their thing. And even simple things like going through a smooth, fast turn can be a problem sometimes, depending upon the car, if it gets a little bit of an understeer situation. And as I said, track awareness is critically important, especially in a competitive scenario. Here we've got this beautiful Dell Technologies McLaren spitting flames out the back, looking awesome. But he's hyper aware that in his rearview mirror, the leader's coming by, happens to be me, which I was pretty excited about, and he lets me pass so that I can continue my progress. Hope you enjoyed the iRacing experience.
All right. So full disclaimer, what you saw there, what you may not have noticed, is that you saw Tom West get taken out, which was the reason why he didn't win the race, at least if you ask him. And
Absolutely.
The winner of the race happens to be yours truly. It was the only race I won, but it made me very happy. And that's why I consistently share it. And that's also why if you play the BOTN scenario that we built in iRacing, it's based on the race at Tsukuba, this race, which is the one I won because I have a little bit of a vanity problem. So I needed you all to see that I won a race. And it's okay, Tom. We all
with
know.
An asterisk by the winner, though, Corey. Let's just
yes, a big asterisk by the winner. All right, hold on. Sorry about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Brett. He's going to walk you through a couple things, and then we'll be back. I'll be back with you in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Corey. So as you saw, this is a simulator. Once we figured out this is what we wanted to do, we had to determine, well, what are we going to drive? And after last year going an average speed of maybe 35, 40 miles an hour in the RV, we wanted to go a lot faster this year. So we went with the GT3 series of car. And this is not typically the car that you would start out with if you join iRacing or if you just go through iRacing individually. We were able to do this because we created a series. But we chose the GT3, because it's a powerful, fast, performant car. But then also we could drive McLarens as well, which obviously with the McLaren and Splunk partnership, that was high on our list of things that we wanted to do. And honestly, I've never driven a McLaren before, and I wanted to see how it was. And the wall tasted great every time. So it's a very challenging car to drive. So, but because we wanted to tell a story with data, we didn't just want to use all of the same car. And within the GT3 series, there are a number of different cars. There's BMW, there's an Audi, there's Mercedes, a Ferrari, a Ford, which has been used a couple times since then, but a number of different cars. So to show differences and see what the data is telling us based on the type of car, two of us, Corey and myself, decided to drive the Beamer. The BMW is not as fast as the McLaren, so I feel like I I don't want to call myself a hero for taking the BMW and taking that speed hit, but I did for the betterment of data and the data to everything story. But we drove the BMW. It is an easier car to control, and so I think there's trade-offs here and there. And the data told that story very nicely throughout the races. So these are the cars that we chose to drive, and this is truly a global racing series. We wanted to make sure that we hit all areas of the world and really go around the world in this virtual race. So you can see here, everything from Tsukuba in Japan to Sydney, Australia, a couple tracks in the Europe area. We did the famous Le Mans, where if you saw Ford versus Ferrari, that's where that race took place. We hit Silverstone in the UK, which is only about 2 hours from where Westy lives. And we did a number of tracks in the United States, ultimately ending in Las Vegas, though, because again, that's where Conf was supposed to be this year. We wanted to ultimately end virtually, of course, but where the conference was supposed to be. Personally, you can see here all these tracks, other than Daytona, are road tracks. So they're not ovals. I personally prefer the oval because it's easier. I did my best at Daytona, but these were all very challenging tracks. My favorite, I'll say, it was Daytona. Westy, love to hear what your favorite is. Corey, we already know what yours is. It's Tsukuba. But Westy, what was your favorite?
It was Bathurst in Sydney. I kind of wanted to say Silverstone, and I had a fun race there, but Bathurst is so much fun. Not so much when you've broken the car after the second lap, but it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah. And Corey, was I wrong? Was Tsukuba your favorite?
I mean, I won there, so yeah, obviously it was my favorite. But the one I've actually gone back and driven the most has actually been Imola. I think Imola is just a beautiful track, and they had their Grand Prix there last week, and it was just, I mean, it's beautiful. So big fan of Imola.
Yeah, and it's crazy. There was a very wide variety of different types of tracks, where we had tracks with long 2-3 mile straightaways, tracks that almost resembled a go-kart track instead. And it was cool to see the differences in data, not just from every driver, but from track to track as well, which again, we tried to make this as wide a variety as possible so we can tell a full story. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's talk about getting the data in. And it turns out that iRacing really does have a gold mine of data that we were able to leverage to tell a number of different stories and ask a lot of different questions. Inherently, though, the iRacing data is very challenging to actually make use of in its native pull from the iRacing platform. So we were lucky to have via a GitHub project, there's it's PyIR SDK, which is allowed us to take this data and turn it into a JSON pull, which we were then able to extract. And we really broke more than 400 data points into 5 different areas or 5 different categories. So you had your car data, which is really, speed, oil pressure, brakes, all the data that's concerning how the car is performing. You had your track data, which again, as Corey said, this is not a game, this is a simulator. A lot of different track and environmental contingencies or data points really come into play with how you are able to drive. Is the track, does the track have gravel on it? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Kind of all of these different factors are data points that we were able to withdraw from the data set as well. Environmental things, how hot is it? What's the air pressure? What's the humidity? All these, again, the environmental factors that in real life affect racing, but also affected our virtual race 2.conf20 as well. Computer data, which is really more around performance and computer and CPU and computer performance from the whatever computer you were running iRacing on. And then session data was more like the metadata around how long were your pings and some of the just being able to connect to iRacing and the actual simulation games. So it was very cool to very quickly in this project see a whole host of data coming out of the platform, and then leveraging the community, leveraging some projects to really make this data easy to get into Splunk. Yep. So we started again with each computer was an endpoint. So I had my racing rig, as Corey said, with a chair that collapsed on itself a few times. but it was my racing rig that was a Windows PC, and that collected my data. We once we were able to get the data into a JSON pool, Westy and Kyle Prins, who unfortunately couldn't be on the call today, were able to write a Python script to get to start pulling the data every third of a second. So we wanted the data to be as in real time as possible. So being able to pull data in a third of a second gave us, as near real time inputs as possible. And then we created an HTTP event collector to send that into Splunk. So that was the majority of our data was through iRacing, and that gave us a lot. But there's other things that we wanted to start correlating as well. And if you paid attention or were part of the road trip to Conf last year, heart data and health data is always a fun thing to correlate against. And when you're racing at 150, 170 miles per an hour, and you're really trying to fight for that spot to, first, second, or in my case, 10th place, your heart starts to race a little bit. So we're actually able to show, like, as we were nearing the end of the race, if it was neck and neck between two drivers, our heart rates were a little bit higher. And I think, Wesley, you had some good stories about how you were looking at your health data when you were trying to win at one of the races, right?
Yeah, I'd polled at Circuit of the Americas and checked my heart rate data after that and compared it to climbing a hill, carrying a buggy in a national park close to where we live. And the heart rate peak was almost the same. There was only 3 beats per minute different between that and racing the first 3 laps of Circuit of the Americas. I was genuinely stunned at exactly how high that peak was, and it stayed above 100 BPM the entire race.
Yeah, it's when you're going this fast, when you're trying to avoid collision, when you're trying to win, it's a high intensity event, a high intensity race. So mine was definitely in the same area, which is not always a good thing, right? But our Splunk instance was based on Splunk Cloud. We were able to send from all of the different desktop endpoints, which I think there was a total of 20. We had 15 racers, but a couple teams had multiple people racing for the same team. So each endpoint sent the data to the cloud, and then we had a DR instance as well. And then we created a number of dashboards to visualize the data, but we also wanted to, every race, we had to make sure that each endpoint was sending the data to the cloud, because what's having a race and collecting data if it's not sending the data? So Westy actually built a dashboard that in real time, as we were kicking off the race, we could monitor who was sending data, who wasn't sending data, so that as we were practicing and getting ready to start the actual race, we were able to do some troubleshooting and some help to make sure everyone was sending data. So I thought that was a really, really good idea, just to make it easier for us to get 100% accuracy. I'm going to hand it over to Westy to talk more about dashboarding and talk more about the visualizations in Splunk.
Thanks, Brett. So far, we've kind of covered the racing. We've raced some races. We're going to make some charts. How difficult could this be? Turns out very. As Brett's kind of already gone and alluded to a little bit with the getting data in. Standard practice for this kind of thing, especially when you've already got a Python script, which you can basically just make use of and just add a REST call at the end. I originally didn't think it was going to be that big a deal until you actually start diving into the data and see exactly what you can play around with. So we wanted to come up with a few different goals for the data. How do we really tell the story? How do we educate ourselves? And how do we make it fun for everybody? So we came up with a few different ideas. The first one was, could we integrate a YouTube dashboard, a dashboard that would allow you to embed a YouTube video and then play that alongside the data? And we wanted to have a look to see what we could do with JavaScript to really kind of make the dashboards pop, what we could do with CSS. As we wanted to make sure that we sent the data in via HEC, because previously for the road trip to .conf, what we did was we stored everything locally and sent them over as JSON files at a time. Here we just wanted to send direct to Splunk. The main reason for doing so is obviously we're already connected. We're racing online. There's no reason to store things locally when we've got everything up in the cloud and running. Whereas in the road trip, we might be going in blackout areas, and therefore it makes sense to store the data locally before sending over. And quickly, as we were starting to play with the practice data, we saw that actually we're getting so much data that reporting quickly and making the dashboard usable became quite difficult. So we wanted to make sure that we made use of summary indexes. We were also getting a lot of junk data, and you don't know until you're actually racing exactly what it is that you want. So we made sure that we captured as much data as possible with any field that we thought was useful, we would just get. And then we would go and summarize it afterwards. And then we'd make sure that we made use of metrics. So the metric, so we would use a command called mcollect, which would send our raw data into summary indexes, but would do so store them in a metrics way, which makes it all really fast. Like, you would find that the dashboards would load within a second, and you were loading over 1 million events for a race. It was really, really, really quick, which is what we were after. That was one of the main goals that we wanted to do. So what you can see here on the right hand side is one of the dashboards that we did create. We came up with this idea that we wanted a single dashboard that was going to be themed towards to whoever the race sponsor was. That would change. We wanted it to be dynamic so we could reuse it. Personally, I didn't really want to create 10 separate dashboards. If I could do it all in one, I was going to do it all in one. So made sure that we did that using CSS. And being able to review the race data. So here we've got lap performance. We're actually looking at Kyle's data over laps 6, 3, and 15. This looks as though it's Indianapolis, and having a look at his speed. And what we can see just with this chart is over those 3 laps, where and how that compared to the fastest lap for the race, where there was where he could get improvement. And we could see as well for this particular chart in lap 3, Kyle went off the track a lot. Looks at least as though he went off the track 3 times. Where there's a big trough, you ain't going very fast. So the fact that it's so anomalous gives an indicator that he probably went off, or he decided that he wanted to get a bit too close to Brett. Lots of people made that mistake.
Ouch.
Next slide.
All right, so we'll let Kyle, he'll virtually join us for a quick demo of the applications.
I wanted to give a quick overview of the overall Splunk dashboard, as well as some of the fun visualizations that we built with it. This is our key landing page for the race schedule environment. As you can see, it's a bit different and tricked out with JavaScript. Special thanks to Tom West. He did a wonderful job with this, so thank you, Westy. But we are showing our next race, as well as the location and our event sponsor. This was huge for us so that we could dynamically change things while still being able to keep a consistent layout across it. As you can see, we're able to hold the time as well as the maps, the number of turns, and the length of each track as well. From here, when you click into this event, you will actually pull up a new screen here. From what we're able to see the overall championship sponsor or championship logo, as well as the race and the event sponsor as well. Again, we tried to keep a pretty common theme while still being able to make each page unique to maybe sponsor colors or dynamic layouts that they would like. From here, we can see that Splunk 3 won this race, so congratulations, as well as the laps completed, lead changes, and the fastest lap as well. Now, we also have a complete race overview, as well as laps completed, incidents, how many laps they were leading, average lap time versus their best lap time as well. Now, we can dive into filters here and take a look at lap performance, position, crash corner, where we're able to take a look at the amount of incidents each car was having in comparison with each other, individual performance of the car, as well as the vehicle status of the car, and then some of the health kit information as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the lap performance, however. So we're going to do this, and for this race, let's take a look at Corey and myself. we'll take a look over here at a specific lap. Let's say maybe lap 4, and a specific metric as well. For this metric, let's go ahead and pick speed. Awesome. And here we can see the speed of myself and Corey and how we did compared to each other. So you can see Corey had me quite a bit here and there and was able to jump quite a bit on the gas better than me and also take those turns a bit better. However, I was able to beat him out a couple times there as well. We can also take a look at brakes, throttle, gear, RPM, and the longitude and latitude acceleration, which is the amount of G's that were pulled in a specific direction as you were racing. As you can see here, this is a different race with a different sponsor. Thanks again to Red River for the sponsorship. And we were able to incorporate their logo and key colors into a design while still keeping a cohesive design pattern as well. So we were really proud of being able to dynamically change logos and colors in accordance to our sponsors while still keeping that cohesive look. Now, one thing I wanted to show as well was the live YouTube video that we were able to correlate the data against. So this is actually a YouTube video that is being played, and based upon the cars that are in the track and the time that the data was being generated by the YouTube video, we're able to show live race results through a Splunk dashboard as well. This was a huge technical undertaking for us that we were pretty excited about. If you have more questions about it, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. That does it for me, though, as far as the demo goes. We'll jump back into the slides and have some more fun.
Very good. Well, I want to say a quick thanks. If you didn't look at the apps and the things we built, it wasn't just a single data source. It was a number of data sources. Big thanks to Ryan O'Connor for building the HealthKit app, which we used. And clearly, we used quite a bit of JavaScript, Python requests, and Python under the covers to make all this happen. A couple things just as kind of a wrap to share some things with you all. Things that we learned and that we shared. One, the community is incredible. So we reached out to a lot of folks for help, guidance, and ideas, and the feedback was great. Metrics are clearly a really quick way to speed up certain sort of searches and dashboards in Splunk to take data that maybe isn't a metric natively or the way that you ingested it originally, but converting to metrics is pretty great. The Heck and JSON payloads made getting data in quite a bit easier. Correlating different data sources is really what kind of the data to everything platform story is about, which is having a single view of data of one data source is interesting, but having a view of lots of data sources in context to each other really tells a narrative and a story that you can take action on. And we proved that here, and we think that it's part of the story. And frankly, fun use cases like goofy stuff like this, it's not just about having fun. Like, hopefully this is inspiring. I know for the 4 of us who are deeply involved in this, it's inspired us to go learn things about Splunk that we didn't know before, that we could apply in our day jobs, and to use the technology in a new way, because this was a fun thing that we could do on the side, and it would justify us spending hours outside of our working day to go learn and explore and implement something different. And frankly, data to everything truly means data to everything. Now, some of the things we've shared is we've committed the script for getting iRacing data out and into Splunk, into our GitHub page. It's built on that Pi IRSDK library, and it can utilize your Splunk deployment. So you can head over, you can click on the link that will share this GitHub repo. Will take you to the link to the script. A big thanks to our sponsors. This would not have been possible without their participation and frankly financial support. So we thank Splunk for supporting the overall series and 4 races. Red River Technology sponsored 2 races, and then Dell, Intel, McLaren, and Arrow all each sponsored a race as well, and our friends from Hippo Digital were nice enough to participate as well. So huge thanks to our sponsors. If you're not doing business with those people, we ask that you consider it. They made this thing possible and invested in us, and hopefully you can invest with them. Now, I do want to, before we go, I want to let you know that the race is not over. While we did make our way to .conf and we virtually raced there, we've actually decided to kind of continue because there's so much, we'll call it meat left on the bone here in this exploration and this project. So one of the things that we're going to be launching here in just the next couple of weeks is a series of continuing races that if you want to get into iRacing and you want to come race with us, you can. Just reach out to us and we'll send you a link, or it'll be posted on social media everywhere when we start opening it up for participation. But we'd love to have you come race with us. And what we're going to do is we're going to have races on a pretty regular basis. And then on an off day when we're not racing, we're going to host hackathons, if you will. And basically it'll be a live streamed working session with the Big Data Beard team where we invite Splunk partners, Splunk customers, and Splunkers in to teach us something interesting about Splunk and then how we might apply it to the racing data. So things like one of the first ones we're going to talk about is probably the idea of, hey, what if instead of sending Splunk or sending these metrics into Splunk using this Python script to JSON to a Splunk index, what if we were to send that into a SignalFX metric store using a smart agent that we might build? So just different ways to think about this data. We're going to explore building new scenarios in BOTN. And we've got a whole list of kind of interesting, fun things that we've thought about that we want to go learn. But what we've realized is, hey, we should probably go find other really smart people to teach us and inspire us. And there's no reason not to do that publicly because, I mean, let's be honest, nobody knows everything. We're all trying to learn. And if we can learn together and have a little bit of fun together, it sounds like a really great thing to me. So look out for that. Siri thinks I'm talking to her. But we'll be actually live streaming all of this on Splunk's Twitch channel. So their official Twitch channel, you can click on the link here and check it out, or you can check out Big Data Beard's YouTube channel and subscribe there. But all the races and all the live stream events will be hosted there. And if you want to participate actively, then certainly reach out to us. So with that, I will say thank you. Thank you for your commitment to being Splunk customers and users and making the community great, because without you, this thing just doesn't happen. So thank you for the time. Hopefully this was fun, and we'll open it up for any questions.
I'll kick it off. What bit of data did you think was not that important until you actually dug in and realized I'm glad I captured this data?
Let me think about that. So I'll start this way. I'll answer it another way. I think one of the pieces of data that we could have learned more from and that I'd like to explore that we just didn't have time, and candidly some of this is a time perspective, is the lat longe data. Because as somebody who's I spend time on a racetrack in my side kind of time and in a real racetrack, not just virtually. And that lat longe data is so incredibly interesting in terms of giving you guidance on when you should and shouldn't be braking, when your turn-in points should be. And that's a piece of data that, I don't know if we would have thought about up front, but because I had a little bit of context on it, I was like, we have to keep that data. That's going to be really interesting down the road.
Yeah, I'm going to say there was a specific field that came, well, there were two. One was whilst heck and everything that normally sends through time, there wasn't really any field that was session time or anything particularly that gave much of an idea. And there were things like session ID. So we sent those through, not really sure that they were going to be very useful. And turns out they were very useful because you got 15 racers all sending through data, and no matter how much you try and tune the outputs and the inputs, you're not going to get a true time match across all those systems. But apparently in the data, one of the fields actually happened to be the session time that we passed in. So we were able to use that to completely 100% accurately get a true reflection of how everyone was throughout the race. So that was something that was kind of fortuitous, but really important and saved me a lot of work.
I'd say session state also, though, because there was this one weird session ID that was it was just 1, 2, 3, 4 was the only thing it said. And we were like, we don't really know what that means. But it turns out it was really useful because it told you if the car was in the pit, on the track, in car, not on track. It actually gave you some really interesting information that you could then correlate to some other activity. Like I said, like pit stops, that was a really good way to figure out, hey, here's a flag that's useful. It really didn't, if we looked in the library, when you looked at the definitions, it wasn't one that was explicitly called out, but that after doing some research, we were like, oh, oh, this makes a lot of sense. This is super helpful.
Yeah, to add to that, until we started doing the data for BOTN, there was a lot of stuff that I thought was kind of just, oh, okay, this is here, like we're going to keep it, we're not really going to use it. But to build on that, there was one that would define whether or not. So we did three. We had like 3 stages for each race. We had a practice, so people can just drive around, get to know the track, get a feel for it. And then a qualifying where you actually vie for pole position for starting the race. And then we had the most important, the race, which is, kind of it. That's what counts. And so for BOTN, we only wanted to look at the race data, but we had ingested the data from the entire 3 stages. So being able to go back and say, okay, number 3, any event that has, a session ID of 3, that is the actual race. And it helped us really just make sure that we were looking at the right data set for BOTN, which obviously when you're answering questions, you have to be pretty precise.
Yep. Good question, Tony.
Hey, so I think, I learned a lot about my driving abilities, and I learned a lot about just, really driving in general from this. I'm interested, just Wesley and Corey, because you've done this in the past. What was one of your biggest takeaways about your own driving that you got from the data?
I brake way too early and too conservatively. Honestly, when I was looking back at my comparing, to give you some context, like I've driven, but I'm not like a pro. Like I go out and drive and have fun. There were some pros on this thing. Like we had legit people that make a living driving esports. Like this is their job. And so to compare their data to our data was incredibly informative. And the thing that I noticed in those speed traces, where I saw my speed trace would have a kind of a flat curve at the bottom. And I looked at the McLaren drivers for the esports, and theirs were really steep and back on. Like they never rested at one speed. They braked down to a speed, and then immediately when they hit that speed, they were back up. And it's because they were braking like at a perfect time to where they would brake, and they would brake all the way into the apex. And as soon as they hit the apex of the turn, they were back in the gas. Whereas I was braking earlier, and I would get down to a speed that I could comfortably apex the turn, but I was at that speed pretty early in the turn. And so I was already off the brakes as I'm turning in, and I wasn't doing something that's called trail braking. And so my curve, like as I'm going around the entire curve, I'm at this kind of low speed, and then I'm back up in the gas. And that honestly, like you do that in a track that has 18 turns, every lap I'm losing, 5 to 10 seconds a lap to somebody who knows how to brake, aggressively and through to the apex at the right time and be back in the gas. That was super informative to me.
Yeah, and I'd say the same as well. Certainly, as far as braking's concerned, one thing as well that I realized maybe halfway through the series was if my car was damaged, I would go in the pits and get it fixed. But then I started to review the data and was like, well, actually, you're not losing that much time. You can save that. You might not quite have the top speed, but as long as you're still fairly comfortable driving it. And for me, there was a big challenge because, my steering wheel is 12 years old. It's been gathering dust for 6 years. I've never driven anything more than a kart, and even a kart, I've only done about 6 sessions. And before that, I think it was Project Gotham Racing 2 was the last racing game that I played. So it's not like I've got much recent experience. And so I felt very much thrown in at the deep end. I used to race a lot when at Project Gotham, but not since. So the data for me was really useful to be able to see again, throttle performance, braking, and not just braking, but actually if you put the throttle on, and especially with these McLarens, the rear of the car, you're just going to lose it. So the feathering that throttle as you're going through through some of the long turns. And I'm not perfect by any stretch. Tsukuba was a perfect example of that. I might have got taken out, but I took myself out enough times as well on there. There's still a lot to learn, but I've really enjoyed actually playing through the data and learning from it. And that I feel like that kind of showed, because towards the back end of the series, I did a lot better, and nobody beat the Beards thanks to this guy.
That's right. He saved our championship. We had to beat the Beards during .conf, and thankfully Westy won the championship. So nobody beat the Beards.
No one has to shave their beard. Phew, thanks, Westy.
You're welcome.
That's the other
From the
question.
beard
Tom
that
West,
can't grow a beard.
when are you going to grow a beard, Tom West?
Just have a look at Michael Cera in a beard, and that's about the only picture you're going to need.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Well, I just want to echo what Corey said, and really, thank you all, for letting us come on here and talk about this fun, crazy project that we did, but also just being awesome and being a part of this wonderful Splunk community. So thank you so much to all of you, and thanks for having us on.
All right, thanks, guys. With that, comes to a wrap the next for this user group meeting for Nebraska and Iowa. Look for follow-up emails for planning the next user group meeting, what time we will take the holiday break and then come back after the first of the year. But in between now and then, if you have questions, there's the user group or the user group hub now. So take care, everybody. Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Thanks,
everybody.
Tony.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks, Tony.